the super drinker.
Okay, everybody, we're going to get started here. Welcome. This meeting is of the Board of Education and public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There's time for the public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda items remark of the public. Roll call.
Mrs. DeTore? Here. Mr. Douglas?
Here.
Mr. Katowski?
Here.
Dr. Phelps?
Here.
Mr. Thorson?
Here. Can we all stand for the pledge of allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have approval for agenda items?
I'd like to move that we adopt a few agenda items that I propose not on the agenda.
Can we move for discussion of this, so approval of, and then we can make our additions?
I'd like to make the additions now. I have a second to consider the motion, or do we even need that? I'm not familiar, but I can pass this out so that everyone gets this.
Shauna, I'm going to move to approve the agenda and addendum items. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ben, let's discuss what you got here.
Okay. There are three items here, and the first is that I'd like to add a discussion of the scope of the powers of the Board of Education. I sent out the Madison Claims decision in which several board members were removed for exceeding the authority of the board. And I'm not contending that that's happening, but what it looks like is we may have done some things inadvertently which are not permitted by a board. And the county prosecutor is our legal counsel. And what I suggest is that we ask the county prosecutor to make a determination in light of the appellate court decision as to the legality of our votes delegating powers to the board president or other members to be exercised outside of duly constituted meetings and the scope of authority of individual members outside such meetings. And as I said, I'll read from what I'm submitting. My reason for this is to inoculate the board and myself from any litigation that may arise challenging the board's exercise of its powers outside of board meetings. As a board, we're performing due diligence in exercising our fiduciary responsibilities if our actions are based on the advice of legal counsel. And the county prosecutor will review this for free and will tell us if we're acting within our scope of power. That's the first resolution I'd like us to consider. The second one is...
If we may, Ben, can we discuss each one of these?
Sure, go right
We
ahead.
should have them? Okay. If I'm understanding this right, your position is that the board may have made decisions outside of our meetings that have opened us up for some sort of liability.
What we've done, Dan, is we've given the board president the authority to do things like increase Dan Wilson's hours and so on his own accord. Now, the question is that exceeding our authority because we only have authority within the duly constituted meeting? Now, the board in Madison Plains gave their board president certain executive powers, and it was found that it far exceeded the authority of the board. What I want to make sure is that we are staying within the scope of our authority, and we can do this quite easily by having the county prosecutor look at the resolutions we passed, and then telling us, because, frankly, I voted for those resolutions. And you know, if we're culpable, I'm certainly culpable. I had no idea until seeing the Madison Clayton's decision exactly what the scope of the board was outside of meetings. And we could be skirting it, we could be exceeding our authority, but I'd like to have that taken care of so we don't have to worry about it, so it becomes a non-issue. So for instance, if you have to, Dan, approve more hours for Mr. Nutter, then you simply approve that and not worry about someone coming to you and saying you've exceeded the scope of authority of the board.
Okay, I think I've got a pretty clear understanding. Is there any questions that you guys have? I mean, just so you have some background, this Madison Plains decision, our current attorney, John Karderski, was the legal counsel in this case. I've had some discussion with John about this case, and actually, I don't know why we wouldn't have John here to, I mean, this was a very lengthy case, if I remember right, from what he had to say.
Maybe 6 pages.
4,000.
There's 4,000 is what he
Oh,
said.
no, that's not the case. That's not the decision. The
Well,
decision distills
but
down
here's-
what happened.
but-
There's 4,000
Ben,
pages of evidence presented, which is a far different thing from reading the case. And, you know, there's no problem, no matter how complicated. If we look at it the right way, it doesn't become still more complicated. This is a simple thing. Ask the prosecutor who works for free, unlike John Karderski. Ask the prosecutor, are we working with our authority of the board? And then we can proceed having that question answered. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay. Again, just to give some background for the rest of the board, I mean, our attorney, John Karderski, was involved in this law case, or this case, has firsthand knowledge of what happened. And Ben, we've really, as far as I'm concerned, we've asked John Karderski every step of the way what we have done, if they're legal and if they're not legal, to do those things. In fact, we've gotten quite a bit of criticism as a board for using our attorney too much to make those decisions. But, you know, that's my opinion. Gentlemen, Jackie, do you have some discussion to this? I don't know why we wouldn't have John here to sort of answer that. I mean, would there be a reason to not?
Because John charges $185 an hour, and the county prosecutor will do it for nothing. That's why the county prosecutor is legally obligated to represent us. Why on earth would we use John Karderski for $185 an hour instead of the county prosecutor?
Gentlemen, do you have any? Ben?
Yes.
I
couldn't hear.
said, in January, when we have the organizational meeting, we choose our attorney to represent us, and we had chosen John Karderski amongst others. Why would you have voted in favor of him as well?
Absolutely. It's
Why
not
would
about
you,
John Karderski.
why would you, in favor, then not want to use the people that we have chosen at our operations meeting, organizational meeting?
Because we usually, traditionally, a school board uses outside counsel not for routine matters. This is a routine matter of seeing if we're acting within our authority, if our resolutions are correct. Using John Karderski, there's no reason on earth to use him because the county prosecutor does it for free. The county prosecutor represents all school districts. Every county prosecutor in the state is obligated to represent the school districts. They also represent townships. So for instance, I'm on the Russell Township Zoning Commission. When we have a legal question, we go to the county prosecutor and we ask the county prosecutor. We don't hire outside expertise unless we literally need expertise that the county prosecutor doesn't have.
Okay. Gentlemen, do you have any questions on this? He wants to add this to an agenda item. I'm kind of in the position that's fine to add it to the agenda. I think I would rather, for me personally, I'd rather have John Karderski here. He's an expert to this case to speak towards what happened here, in my opinion. And so having that background, I think we worth it. But and if we want the county prosecutor here as well,
No, there's no there. What we do, Dan, is we simply put together these resolutions and say, here's the authority that we're granting, and it's authority which exists outside of a board meeting, which was one of the issues in that case. And we simply ask the prosecutor, are we within our authority as a board to do this? That's all. They don't have to come here. We don't have to go to them. But we do, I cannot, as an individual, ask the county prosecutor to do that. What we have to do as a board is say, please review this. We want to stay within the law.
Okay.
We want to do the right thing. That's all.
Okay.
Nobody has to go there. Nobody has to come here.
All right.
And I agree with you. I think John was I agree as well, because John knows every in and out of our entire district.
Well, he was part of this case, but I see where Ben's coming from. Okay, Ben, I think we understand where you're coming from there. The second resolution that we met.
Okay, the second resolution is I recently asked Mike Gursky, our attorney for the public, I asked John Gursky for, I can tell you exactly what I asked him for. I asked him to send me the materials of the communications he's had with Board of Education members, superintendent, assistant superintendent, treasurer, and interim treasurers that they've had with Mr. Gursky, including all manner of electronic communication, including but not limited to emails, text messages, and audio recordings in any hard copy, including but not limited to letters, memos, or notes. And I think that is something that every member of this board should want, because we have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's right for this district. And part of it is we have to listen to our legal counsel. And that then squares us with our fiduciary responsibility. And Mike Gursky has run up some really large bills. And I've seen nothing in writing from him on some of the various advice that he gives. Now, a typical attorney will send you a letter that says, as per our conversation of, and you then get a rundown of what exactly we talked about and what you should do. Now, Mike Gursky doesn't do this. He says it's going to cost us extra money, but the fact is, without this in writing, it can't be shared with the other members. So I've gotten virtually no legal feedback from him regarding anything, except when he's at the meetings and he gives us his verbal opinion on various things. So,
which has been pretty much the same for me, but he's given us a lot of information on a lot of, well, okay.
But
so
we have, how did our bills get so high again? It's not because we
how much are our bills? What are our bills to date from John Gursky?
We can ask our treasurer, but it exceeds $30,000, I believe.
Based on what? Have you seen our bills? I mean, you say $30,000. Could I say $10,000?
No,
I mean,
that would be wrong.
Okay. I haven't.
But
what
all
is
I'm
that?
asking for, wait a minute, Dan, wait a minute. All I'm asking for is what I'm entitled to as a board member.
Sure.
Because as a board member, I'm entitled to the full legal advice of Mr. Gursky.
Okay.
Everything that he gives the board, he does not give a member, he gives the board as an entity. This board is an entity, it is not individual members. So
I'm with you, but I mean, we don't have to be adversarial. I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from,
Right.
or what you're looking for.
So what I'm looking for
Okay.
is because
Do we need to
Mr.
time out
Gursky
then?
has been
Okay.
very cagey about what he's put in writing.
Okay.
I'm looking for all of his communication so I can get an understanding of what legal advice we've gotten and where we stand. And that's where I stand on this.
If I may,
something that everyone should want.
If I may, this has come up a lot about this board having John Gursky here spending lots of money on John Gursky. Why don't we have John Gursky give us some bills for all the time he's been? He's been here for 20 years. To say that this board spends more than another board, I don't know what another board
Well,
spends.
Dan, I can tell you it does because last year I was
But
complaining
then,
about our growing.
we'll do that, but we'll do that.
And I can tell you it does because I went to Michelle Tulai, our treasurer, and she pulled the last 4 years, or 5 years actually, of legal bills. And the bills, in fact, did increase last year, and they're substantially higher this year. And the information is publicly available if you're interested, if you want to actually know. You don't have to ask Mike Gursky.
Okay.
But we get billed, we have that information.
But then is his behavior different this year? The way he's writing his bills and the way he's doing that, is his behavior different this year? I have like 3 questions. One, is his behavior different this year than prior years? Is he billing the same way? 2, is what have the bills been, there was obviously a lot of conflict going on in a period of time. Since the conflict is gone, have the bills dramatically changed?
Okay, you mean in the last month? Or what? I can
Yeah,
tell you that.
comparing the first 3-4 months to the last month.
Yeah.
Because we obviously haven't seen the bill. And then if we are going to compare things, then we would need to go back and look at windows of time when there's actually been equal conflict, and especially when the board might have spent $20,000, $30,000, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. And looking at did the prosecutor get involved in those times? Was that pattern of behavior consistently used in the last 20 years by the board? So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think would need to be pulled together to have an ability to look at this with insight of comparing time periods. There was a time period just recently, I'm sure the legal fees went way up because we had all these, how many different articles did we get put into our
Public record request, I mean, sure.
So, I mean, we're not generating public records requests, the community's generating.
Yeah.
That's creating curiosity.
Yeah, I don't know, Tom, you're talking about something that's completely different from what I'm talking about. What I'm talking
No,
about
I'm talking
is-
about the records.
No, wait a minute, Tom. No, you must misunderstand what I'm requesting here. What I'm requesting is information from Mr. Podgorski as to what legal advice he's given over the last 6 or 8 months. And that is...
Well, electronic communications is what you're
Exactly.
Okay.
No, not just electronic communications. What I'm trying to get is all of his records about what communications we've had, what the board's done, what advice has been given. And the reason is because I feel like I have not benefited from that advice. I've gotten very, very little legal counsel from Mr. Podgorski. And as a board member, it's something I'm simply entitled to. So I asked Mr. Podgorski for it, and he said he would not give it to me. He said it in one word, no. I don't know, did you guys get that email exchange that I had with John?
No, I mean, he should be here. I mean, we should have him here saying that, not you.
Yeah. Well, this is not about John Podgorski.
No, but you're
It's
saying,
not about
you're
bills.
making a statement of what he said, and he's not here to say that.
Well, Tom, you can read the email. It's not like something I can hide or cover up or
Okay,
make
gentlemen, please. You know what? This is to decide whether or not we want to add this resolution to our agenda. I just wanted to understand what your point was, and where you were coming from.
And I
don't think it needs to be.
It's only about getting that legal advice and having. It's not about Podgorski's bills, and it's not about John Podgorski representing us. It's simply, I want access to the legal advice that the board has had, and I think every member should have this, including everyone at that end of the table. Everyone should have this.
Okay, item number 3.
Item number 3. Now, this gets into the very issue. I first proposed this back in late August or September, I forget which. And I believe that because of the bills and the misuse of legal service, in my opinion,
So this misuse of legal services started before this board?
Oh, yeah. In fact, it's been going on because usually boards do not have a policy like this. Most boards don't have any policy at all on this, as you know, Jen, you've looked into it.
Well, and that's where I would like to get to with that.
But
as to
let
why.
him state what he wants to do, if you don't mind, and then you can answer, because you
I did.
chair policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you know, with all due respect, Jackie, I proposed this back in August or September, and it hasn't seen the light of day. It's
Ben,
just not
what do you propose,
So
please?
that is why I'm proposing it now.
Okay,
And
which is to do what?
What this is it's on the use of legal and other professional services. And what it does is it creates a structure in which the board can expend that money. Because as all of you are aware, the board exists as a corporate entity, not as individuals. No one individual has the power of the board. So any expenditure of money on legal services should be specifically approved by the board. And that's what this resolution does. And it also makes it clearer what legal services we're getting, and everyone then gets those. And this is a very important thing about this. In the usage of legal services, often one member will talk to our attorney, and the other members either hear nothing about it, or they get what that member tells them who's not an attorney and may not have gotten the story completely straight, or may have. It's immaterial. The material fact is that every member, as this is, according to this proposal, will get the same information from the attorney. Because what it says is all inquiries shall be CC'd via email to all board members, the superintendent and treasurer by the board member making the inquiry, and responses shall be CC'd via email by the provider to all board members, the superintendent and treasurer. Therefore, because of this, we have legal advice in writing, which we have not been getting, and every board member gets the same legal advice in writing. Another thing it does, and this is where I want the county prosecutor to look at this to see if this is legal. It says, in the event that a vote by the board authorizing the use of such services is not possible because in the judgment of the president of the board, time is of the essence, the president of the board may authorize board members use of such services. So that is something we have to ask is that actually something we can do? Authorize the president to act as an individual rather than act as a corporate board. So this set of bylaws, I think, would both give us better legal representation and would make sure that we're operating in accordance with some kind of structure, that everyone gets that legal representation, that the bills itemize what it is, that we have a paper trail, which you may know if you read the decision in Madison Plains. Madison Plains could not produce any of the information they claimed that John Kryberski gave them, that he advised them on. That record didn't exist. Now, John says it's because they didn't want to introduce it, but the point is, if there's ever a question about our actions.
Wait a minute, John said it was because they didn't want to introduce it?
Yeah, that's what John said.
But he said no to you about, okay.
No, about Madison Plains. He and I discussed Madison Plains one time. And he said the reason that the board there did not produce a paper trail showing that they did their fiduciary responsibility by concurring with, in their actions, with what John Kryberski advised them, is because they could produce in court no paper trail. John said the reason is they did not want to produce it.
Okay. Just so I understand this, we pay Neola for what? Isn't this kind of what they do?
Right, so here's, and this is just to give the rest of you, you proposed this back in the fall sometime, and with all due respect, Ben, I've waited 6 months for an appointment with Tim from Neola. 6 months to get. I said that Mr. Kotowski introduced this policy back in the fall, and I've waited 6 months for an appointment with Tim from Neola. Neola is our the group that creates all of our policies for us, keeps us up to date on law and things like that. We finally just had a meeting, and Mr. Netter was there, Mr. Palmer was there, I was there, and Tim was there. When we went through our entire packet of new policy and law, when we were finished with that, it was the first thing that I handed to him then. And the very first words that came out of his mouth were, I don't know a district that has this. And I said, okay, that is okay. But could you kindly do the research, and if you don't find anything, email the board as a whole and let us know that. He said there's not a district out there that does this. I have more issues with it than I'm even going to get into now because I'm waiting for Tim and giving him the benefit of the doubt since he does and creates our policies for us. And I also said, if you don't find anything, would you take a look at this particular one and let us know if this is something that will work for us or can be incorporated?
Kryberski has looked at this, and so our attorneys looked at it. I mean, Neola provides models, but they're not the only place from which this can come. I mean, the main thing is that that one, the procedures are sound, and two, that they're legal. And that's really, I think, what the discussion should be about, because I think our district needs this, because we've had some kind of uncontrolled use of legal services, and everyone has not gotten the benefit of that legal advice. And so this is twofold. It controls use of legal services so that it is being, so that the board itself is dictating use of legal services, and it makes sure that every member of the board gets the same legal advice.
Okay, these 3 items Ben is proposing that we put on our agenda as an amendment. Please, I'm sorry, Mr. Nutter.
Mr. Kotowski, are you saying that, okay, back to number 1 here, the county prosecutor, you're saying use the county prosecutor and all the...
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying whenever possible.
Whenever possible.
Because he represents us for free, so, yeah.
Are they experts in education? I mean, we're talking not complex issues, just in general. I mean,
This is not a complex issue. This is something...
I'm just asking, I'm not talking
Are
about
they experts in education? Well,
Right.
they represent by law every district in Geauga County, and...
Do any of them use them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. We used to use them quite a bit more than we do
Yeah,
now.
actually, Kryberski said we've hardly ever used them in the district. When I asked him, because I said, well, that seems to make sense if we're not paying for a county prosecutor, he says they don't really necessarily do that. Now, again, I think he should be here for this discussion, only in that his expertise or his information, I think, would be helpful. Not that I disagree with what you're asking to do here, but more or less that most of this stuff has to do with Kryberski. Why not have him here?
Well, number 1 does not have to do with Kryberski at all.
He was the attorney in that case.
Nothing to do with him.
Okay.
No, because I'm saying that the precedent applies, but it has nothing to do with John Kryberski. It
We-
simply has to do with...
Mike, you had other questions, because
Yeah.
I think we pretty clearly understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, just in the second part, we go down to the document says there's nothing in writing, various things. I guess my question is, being a new superintendent, what is the board always calling legal counsel for anyway? I mean, as a school board,
I'd love to know.
as a superintendent and a treasurer, you hire us to run the school district.
Right.
And we run the school districts. I don't understand why all the board members.
You know, here from that standpoint, I've been a board member since June. I've talked to John Pekierski probably 3 times in the last week as a president. Prior to being a school board member, I never talked to him.
Right.
Other than when he was here and was giving us advice in executive session regarding open enrollment, regarding, we had some legal issues, I think, with, well, we had some issues that we had to talk to him about employment with certain teachers and certain things. That was the only time I ever talked to him. I don't know from the rest of the board standpoint, but I was under the understanding when we did that he was available to all of us to talk to if we had issues. You've talked to him about this case. So, you know, the idea that he's sort of only for one individual and then we don't, I'm not sure where you're coming from, but he can certainly address it.
You're totally missing it evidently, Dan, because what I'm specifically talking about is, as a board member, I am due all the legal advice that any other board member gets, and what I'm asking Pekierski to do is produce what that advice is. The attorney has no attorney-client privilege in this case, and attorney-client privilege only works to benefit us. An attorney has no attorney.
I'm not an attorney, Ben. I wouldn't know what his attorney-client privilege would be, but I would look for his advice. I think we understand this. I think we need to move on because we have things that we want to address.
Can I just ask one more thing?
Please.
It's coming in as new here. It seems this has been out for a while.
Yeah, this has been out for quite a while.
And I got this yesterday. I mean, from my standpoint, if we're going to, I like to put board agendas together ahead of time. And if we're going, I don't come to the board meeting the day before and get things added to the agenda. I would like for us to have that discussion and talk on it, but in the future, if we can move forward, part of the reason we have all these conversations and things are, we get here and we just surprise people with things that are on the agenda. Moving forward, I would like to get to a more, unity.
Well, frankly, I got the agenda yesterday.
Right, and you did.
I mean,
and
this
typically
was
those
not
we get
themselves, and I emailed this out to people before I even got a board agenda, so they have had more time to investigate this than they have had to look at our own agenda.
Okay, gentlemen, we need to move on. Are there any other additions that we can discuss and then vote if we want to add those additions? I think one of the most important things that this board meeting is for is to address open enrollment. We promised those folks from open enrollment that this meeting we would do so. Looking at this agenda, we have, I'd like to propose, I'd really like to propose that we add to this agenda a resolution to increase as necessary and appropriate each grade capacity limits to allow students who were here last year or students of West Geauga teachers in accordance to our collective bargaining agreement. Whether we vote for that or up or down, we'd like to add that as a resolution so we can put this to rest. I would like to add that as an agenda item. So we have 4 items that we'd like to do to approve the agenda items. Mike, how would we do that? Sure. A resolution to increase as necessary and appropriate each grade capacity limits to allow students who were here last year and or students of our West Geauga teachers in accordance to our collective bargaining agreement.
We also had the treasurer.
Yes, and also I want to amend, you'll see item 10G. I'd like to change that date from 6/21 to 6/30 on the agenda. Sean has been gracious enough to add an additional 9 days to help the board out, and we really appreciate that. So that change would happen there as well. How would we either approve certain items or not approve certain items, Mike? How would you do that?
Take them out one at a time.
Okay, so item number 1, roll call each one? Okay, item number 1 that Mr. Pekierski has submitted, can I have a roll call, please? Whether we're going to add this to today's agenda or not.
So we have a motion and a second right now to approve the agenda. Do we have to vote for that first or no?
Mike, you're saying that we take each item in roll call that he might add to, or we might add to the agenda?
I don't know which ones you want to add or not add before you approve the agenda.
So we can do those before we decide.
Once you do that, then we have an agenda that you can approve it and move on.
Okay, so I'm going to motion to approve item, well, no, I think 1, 2, and 3, Ben, should be added to our agenda. I think it should be for our next board meeting, which will be next week, and I think we should have John Bargerski. That's my opinion. So,
Ben, would you like John Podgorski here to explain these?
As I said, there's really no need for John, but if you want to spend $185 an hour, go ahead. I'll wait till next week.
Why, I mean, I think anybody, his name's in here. I think you can explain it, that's all I was just asking.
I'm going to motion that we add my resolution. Do I have a second? Okay. I motion that these items that we have with Ben be added to our agenda for our next meeting, which will be next week.
Second that.
Okay. Roll call.
Which one are we rolling?
We're roll calling for my resolution to increase,
And does that include the change to?
and it also includes item 10 to be changed.
Three motions.
Yeah, we really do. We really do. Okay? Okay. Shauna, are you keeping track? We're going to start with, I'm motioning that Ben's 3 items be moved to next agenda for our next meeting.
Okay. We'll do that one separately, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Do I have a second? Second. Roll call.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes.
Dr. Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mrs. DeTore?
Yes.
Okay, I motion that the resolution we added a resolution to our open enrollment discussion to increase as necessary and appropriate each grade capacity limits to allow students who were here last year and/or students of the WestGBrd teachers in accordance to our collective bargaining agreement, and item 10 change to item 10G change to 6/30/14. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Roll call.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes.
Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Dr. Phelps?
Yes.
Mrs. DeTore?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Okay, that was painful. I move to approve the agenda with the additions and as reads. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes.
Dr. Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mrs. DeTore?
Yes.
Okay, approval of minutes from May 28th, 2014 meeting. Do I have a second? I motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah, second.
Discussion?
When will I was absent obviously from the 9th meeting, when will those be available? I don't know what happened.
I'll have to do it by the end of the month.
Okay, any discussion on these minutes for the 28th? Do I have a motion to approve? Or roll call?
Mr. Thorson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeTore?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Dr. Phelps?
Yes.
Okay, open enrollment. This discussion of open enrollment is just generally, guys, where we've come, what's led us to the place that we're at today. This board has made decisions to cap open enrollment, to have specific numbers for specific grades with open enrollment. Since that process happened so late in the year, there have been students that have not been able to return back to school. Now, a lot of what I've been asked and what I've been told has been, is that something that can be grandfathered? Are there students, since the students were here from before, can they be grandfathered? We've been given legal advice, and I speak for the board, but certainly you guys can chime in, that can't happen, that grandfathering students in open enrollment was something that we couldn't do. I believe what's in front of us today is our community feels that those 31 students have been left without a voice, and that we left them without a time to react. whether we capped those numbers in a timely fashion or not, we did that in the time that we had. So I would like to open this up for discussion as to what the board feels should happen to those students and in our policy with those. This is good for you. Do you have any opinions on that? Do you have any thoughts towards that?
So I apologize is that I was in Savannah, Georgia with my Girl Scouts for 10 days and then out of town with my family. And I did not even know there was a meeting until 2 days ago. And so I had no idea that this was even coming up for discussion or anything. So I started doing a little bit of research. If you'll see on the very first page that I give you, document 1, these are part of our current policy 0123. And I just put these in here because, you know, we have a lot of new members. It's very, very hard to keep track of all the policies that we have. And I just want to point out that N, O, and P. N says board members will prepare carefully before each meeting so that when each board member has the floor, he or she can make comments that are concise, organized, and clear. O says that they will vote his or her individual convictions based on the available facts and his or her independent judgment. And they will refrain from surrendering his or her judgment to particular individuals or groups. They will devote sufficient time, thought, and study in those proposed actions. Document 2 just shows you exactly what has been given to open enrolled applicants when they fill out the application. It is our guidelines per se, and what I've highlighted is that, especially number 4, it says, no student, once accepted by WestG, will be displaced during that year. However, all approved enrollments are in effect for the current school year only and may be discontinued at the discretion of the participating Board of Education in subsequent years. That is given to all applicants. Document 3A. So what I did was I felt that we were kind of getting in a rut. And so, trying to get my head around this. Again, we're a very young board. Ben and I have only been here 2.5 years, and all the rest of you, weeks and a couple months. And so, I thought, what is the bigger picture here with open enrollment rather than just WestG? So what you have in front of you with document 3A is a list of, right on the Ohio Department of Education, didn't take this from anywhere but, where it's available. You have all of the counties that touch us, surround us, connect to us. And you'll see all of the schools that are in green offer statewide open enrollment. All of the yellow do not offer open enrollment, period. So if you put those 2 pages next to each other, you'll see. Because I know we've heard over and over and over that, 463 of 600 school districts offer statewide open enrollment. But I think the issue here with WestG is not that any one of us, from what I'm getting, want to discontinue open enrollment. I think that we just want to manage it better. So what are we doing differently than what all the other schools that are around us in Northeast Ohio are doing that we're doing? So if you look over here, I actually started at the top of this list in Ashtabula County, and I actually started making phone calls until I got all the way down to Crestwood. And I called every single treasurer and asked them what their 13-14 school year count was and how many open enrollment students they had. Until this wonderful woman at Crestwood showed me how to go onto the ODE and to the treasurer reports and figure those numbers out. So what you'll see is that in each of the counties, West Geauga schools this year had 11.4% open enrollment. That was the ratio, of open enrollment to our total count. Now, if you look at we'll take an Ashtabula first. There's only one district, that is anywhere, or 2 districts that are anywhere remotely close. They're in Duluth. Buckeye local schools have 12% open enrollment, and Geneva area city schools has 9%. Oh, and that got cut off. I need that copy for you guys. But if you look at those, we'll get to that later. So there's only 2. Everywhere else in Ashtabula is 7% or lower. Then if you look at Geauga County, every single school district in Geauga County offers open enrollment. But the only district that is anywhere remotely close to us is Berkshire. They only have 7%. All the other school districts have 1%, 4%, 5%. If you continue to go down, Oh, that got cut off as well. And you look at Portage County. Aurora is the only school that does not offer open enrollment, but again, all of the districts that offer it, other than Kent City, are at 5% or less with open enrollment. And then you look at Cuyahoga County, and there are only 2 schools that offer open enrollment, and Cuyahoga Valley JBS is at 14% if they're a joint vocational school, and Cleveland City Schools only has 1% open enrollment. So then I thought, okay, well, what do I do with that information? So, document 4. For those of you that have not been a part, I hope that some of you have seen this packet or have been given it. Over the past year, our district has worked on a long-range plan. And our vision statement said that WestG will be top 5 in 5. That means that West Geauga in 5 years will try to be in the top 5% of the school's performance index ratings in the state of Ohio. Next page, document 5A. So then I looked up all of the schools, and what you'll see in pink on the next page is where West Geauga schools is. We are 52 on the list of over 800, but within that list, they also include charter schools and stuff like that. So, who is better than us? We have 51 school districts that are better than us, and in my eyes, I thought it was important. I crossed out the charter schools, and looked at all the other schools that are above us. Now, what you'll see in green is that all of those schools in green do not offer any open enrollment. These are schools that are better than us, okay? And 36 of the 46 don't offer open enrollment, and they're better than us. Now you look at the blue. The blue is those with statewide open enrollment. If you look at all of those numbers, they're 1.4%, half of a percent, 5%, 1%, 6%, and 9%. The only one I'm having issues with is this Miller City, because I could not disseminate that off of ODE, so that may not be a true number, but it may very well be. It's what I can figure out on the schools. And then the yellow represents schools that, have contiguous. Now, one step further. If you were to look at this document, and the numbers can change year to year, but to be in that top 5%, you would have had to be in 39th place or higher in order to be in the top 5%. Now look at those 5 schools that offer open enrollment in the top 39 schools. Not one school district offers more than 6% open enrollment. Not one. So then, what I'm getting off of this is not that I think that we need to get rid of open enrollment. What I believe we need to do is more homework. I don't think that we have been provided the information that we need to be able to make a solid decision. I mean, this is just what I pulled off of ODE, but I've never ever seen these numbers before, nor have I ever been given the opportunity. Quite frankly, we've been fighting for 6 months to get any documents whatsoever. I just think that going off of our policies that, we will make decisions off of facts. How can we make decisions if all the facts aren't presented to us? Then we find ourselves making decisions based off of opinions and not facts.
You document 6, you talk about.
So document, and this may be irrelevant, but since you have your resolution on the board, but the reason the next 3 documents, 6, 7, and 8, was the first one is the original that we voted against back in March of what the superintendent had recommended to us. Now, the reason I just do that is so you can compare apples to apples. The original numbers that was being proposed to us was 379 open seats, which would bring our school district up to 17.7% open enrollment. Then document 7 is what we approved back in March. Now, that brought us down from 11.4% to 9.3%. And if you look at the sidebars, I thought this was, and this is just my own personal, what I like to see, I broke it down by grade level, and you can see next to it where we start getting into some dangerous areas of individual grade levels. Overall, it only puts us at a 19.3, but if you'll notice, in the elementaries, it only puts us at a 4%, which, is not that bad. But then when we get into the middle school, we're at 11%, and when we get to the high school, we're at 13% of our high school is open enrollment. So I think it's really important that we start looking and considering these things when we're trying to manage this better. Then, from an email that I got, I'm assuming that some discussion happened at the last meeting that I wasn't at, and you had asked for some new numbers that could possibly help with getting in, bringing back these new people. And the document that was given to me, it really raised some red flags to me because, well, first off, the one number was incorrect. At any rate, if you go down the sides from what we approved and you compare these two documents together, 7 and 8, you'll see that this new number that was proposed to you guys for these conceptual capacities last week, actually, not only does it raise the numbers up to include all of those, but it also allows us to bring in 23 new additional kids. That's, you know, if the board is trying to allow students to grandfather back in, this is taking in new kids as well, and then we have now built up the same issue that we're having right now. New kids next year, if they get cut, now we have more and more kids that we're trying, you know, taking on. And so the difference, you know, that I'm looking at was 58 bodies when we only have to bring in 35. Well, hypothetically 35 students that were excluded, and this number is raised by 58. It didn't add up to me. So why was the increase so large? Why was the increase not just me, it was counted as 35? So that's where that kind of threw a red flag at me. And then again, if you look down the side bars, you know, by raising it, the 58, we've then jumped from 11.3% to 11.8%, increasing open enrollment instead of decreasing it or maintaining it. And it is also, with those new numbers, raised our elementaries from 4% to 8.5%, raised the middle school only 0.2%, but also raised the high school from 13% to 15%. I only did these food for thought because I think that we're really, really in dire need of information.
Yeah.
We really are.
Well, in the spirit of transparency, because I am the newest board member with only weeks' experience, I was the one that made the request for this information. I have been trying to bring myself up to speed in a relatively short period of time on the whole open enrollment issue. And it really is like an onion, because the more you peel back, the more layers you discover. It is an incredibly complex issue. At this date that I'm at right now, 6/19, I still don't know enough about this issue. I am doing my best to bring myself up to speed, but one of the reasons that the number, how it was explained to me, is why that number is larger than what it is because there is a priority mechanism that is in place based on when kids apply for open enrollment and other factors that would raise them higher on the list. In order to bring back, if that's what this board wants to do, those students, other students may have to be included in that number. So again, I'm not an expert on open enrollment. I'm just trying to do the best that I can with the information that I have right now. And you know, since I have the floor, I'll continue to speak, that I have been absolutely inundated, whether I'm at the Giant Eagle, at church. I was at church this past Sunday, and people from all different types of backgrounds, they come up and, you know, congratulated me. Some of them have wondered, do I need a psychological examination for doing what I did in terms of being interested in this? But there's a lot of interest out in the larger community about this issue. And the part that I want to make sure that I do a good job of representing, because the one thing that I do understand is that there's not just one issue here, there are two issues here. There are the issue of the students that are outside the district right now that we invited into our district this past school year. And by a matter of policy, they've been left out. Now, that's one issue. And the second issue, because I heard a little bit about this, and I don't know if there's agreement on the board on this, but I think that there's still a big question out there in the larger community of should we or shouldn't we be doing this? And I think that that question needs to be answered thoroughly also, because we are not going to be allowed to move forward until we answer that question. And those are two different questions, one before us this evening, but the second issue I don't think is going to go away until we spend the proper amount of time, do our due diligence process, and get the rest of the information. And Mrs. DeTore has done an outstanding job of presenting some new information even while I'm sitting here on this topic. But for me, We're not talking about numbers. We're talking about children. And I didn't take the step that I took in being on this board to hurt kids. So any decision that I make from this moment forward will be for the protection of kids and doing the right thing. Because I'd like to know, and if somebody has a good answer, I would like to know how the number grew as large as it did. I think that's a fair question. I'm not expecting an answer right now, but it is troubling to me in terms of how did that number get that large when we look at what some of our compatriots right there in Geauga County. None of the other schools, based on the numbers I have in front of me, are near where we are. I think that's a fair question. So,
Can I just say, point one thing out too, and I had a conversation with several superintendents and treasurers, and this was actually at Riverside, and they are the largest school district in Lake County. And this superintendent had told me, of course he knew right away, oh, and I'm asking about numbers, you must be calling from WestG. Yes, I am. And so he said, they had this issue. 10 years ago, they had 280 open enrolled students. But they still have 4,600 kids. They had 5,000 at the time. And they had 280. And when I don't know what this means for us or anything else, but just in conversations from other people, is what they found themselves doing is not taking it anymore in kindergarten. And each year, you naturally lose the 20 or 30 bodies, moving out from graduation. And so now they're down to 14. They have 14, kids in open enrollment. 10 years ago, they had 280. But because they couldn't figure out, how do we do this? They just naturally said, no more coming in. And it just,
Well, yeah. Michael, you mentioned how did we get in this situation, and I think we have two factors that are important in the mix. And the first factor is we have declining enrollment. That means we have openings, so we're natural for that. We have facilities here that once had over 2,600 students in them. We now have, 1,875 resident students. So you can see we've got this massive overcapacity, which we have to pay for, at least in terms of the buildings and their maintenance. We have to pay for that no matter what, no matter who's here. That's one reason. The other reason is there is the financial factor. And if you look at this, for instance, we're going to look at our rejiggered 5-year report, and what we find is in 14 we have $9.922 million in the bank. That's unrestricted funds. However, in 15 we're spending that down $105,000. That's no big deal. In 16 we spend it down $1.395 million. In 17, $2.798 million. In 18, $4.202 million. We end up in a negative balance. We, without open enrollment or with reduced numbers, will be in an even worse situation. And unless we're ready to ask the community for massive new money, this is including passing 2 renewal levels. So we have to do some painful things. We have to either ask for new money, we have to find ways of raising money, we have to cut costs. Those are things that we have to do because this projection is basically fundamentally accurate. It can vary somewhat, these projections do, but what we know is roughly what our income will be, because we're not like a business where a business can go out and knock on doors or have a sale or liquidate. We're pretty much locked into these numbers, and what it means is that we're going to be, in a matter of years, we're going to be in negative territory at West Geauga. And one of the ways to staunch that or ask the public for the least possible amount of money is to have open enrollment. That's brought in. And it shouldn't be just a financial situation that dictates this. Open enrollment in general does some good things for this community. This community is losing population because people are aging in place. And it means that we are basically a very white community. What open enrollment does is add a small fraction of minorities, which is important because white people are are reproducing at less than replacement rates in this country. That just happened last year for the first time. It happened a little earlier than they thought. What that means is the world that our kids are going out into is going to be a much more diverse world than West Geauga. And having open enrollment and bringing in some diversity to this community is good for our kids. It literally aids our children in every way that they need to develop as individuals. And the other aspect of open enrollment is the human aspect. What we're talking about now, and I think this resolution is simply what we're doing this year. So it's not an answer to the question. It's what are we doing this year about open enrollment? We have kids who we cut out of West Geauga with no time to have a decent alternative. And we really owe them that because they're human beings first and revenue sources they should not even be considered in a decision like this. They're human beings who deserve a decent education, who, because they've been in our schools, we owe them something. We owe to treat them. We owe them the treatment that we would give any individual that we were trying to be equitable with. And I think approving these numbers that the superintendent gives us allows us to do that because although they have an increase in the numbers, that's what we have to do in order to get those kids back in the district. And Jackie,
not necessarily, because that's not necessarily true.
That's not
What
true.
his resolution is just, read your resolution again for me, Leon.
Yeah.
Resolution, if we were going off of what was given to you guys last week,
Yeah.
the resolution would be to adjust those numbers according to that thing.
Right.
This resolution is just saying to adjust the numbers to allow for those
Yeah.
30, those
Well,
30
see, and
that
if Palmer was accurate in what he did, because, and Deb is here, she can tell us about that if you don't mind. I mean, the numbers, as we were told at the last meeting, were the numbers we needed to get to in order to admit those students. And the reason is, as Michael said, that we cannot cherry pick students. We simply have to take them in order of application. And therefore, to get those students back in, we need those numbers. So that's what Palmer said last time. And yeah, is that correct?
It is true, and those numbers are higher because we wanted to get the teachers' children in under open enrollment as well, so that includes that.
But my concern is that the number, again, we had 35 excluded, but this number is raised by 58. And
It's 23 kids, and 7 of those are in kindergarten. If you just break down the grade levels, it's very small amounts.
you see what I'm
It's,
saying?
again, it's very complicated, and in order to
So
understand
why,
it, you really
why
have
do
to
you
look
raise it
at it.
up by 50, the count by 58, your total count by 58? Because then theoretically you have to take in some of those new applicants, if these numbers are accurate.
Yes,
So we would have to take in some additional.
yes.
Now, can I ask you, the resolution that you guys propose does not force us, the one that you propose helps us to not have to take in any new.
No, it doesn't, Jackie. In order to implement it, they'll have to go to these numbers. Is that correct, Deb? In order to
Well, no, that's
implement it.
not-
With the
well, hold on,
with the
Matt.
exception of
If I-
the teachers' children.
Okay. Excuse me. If I may, the resolution that we proposed was with legal counsel. How do we, from our standpoint, how do we incorporate those kids who were here in the district, who are no longer here, that we, I don't know, for lack of a better term, displaced? How would we allow that to happen? And so, looking at, would that be 58 or 27 or 31? How could we do that?
The question was, I asked the question a few times today to Deb, and I asked Deb, I said, my understanding is those 31 kids that did not get in, there's nobody in any of those classes that is in under open enrollment that is a first-time open enrollment. And the answer to me was no, that's not true. So the only kids left out under 5B, where they currently attending under the open enrollment policy, those kids that are left out are the kids that were here last year, which are those 31 kids. And the way in the collective bargaining agreement of the teachers says that those kids can come. So the resolution reads simply, you're going to increase by 31 kids those kids that were left out that were here last year. It's allowing them to come back along with the teachers' kids. And that's why it says according to the collective bargaining agreement. There's
As opposed
CBA.
to 58 kids.
There's not 50, no, there's not 58 kids. You have choices here. You can add, you could raise the caps, which increases, that goes back to what you're saying. Okay, if I'm going to increase the caps and I add all these and are on the list, the waiting list. What this is saying is, open enrollment is, obviously a local control, local decision, one that needs to be made. I think you all need more information. I think you need to look at where, where is it advantageous and where is it becoming, not advantageous in the district. Those are things that you need to look at. I think you need that information. I think you need it quickly, and I think you need to look forward to make a decision on what you want to do early on in the school year. So my point on this one is, right now we're looking at these kids that were displaced, and I do believe, I've been a superintendent for 11 years now. We need to let them know early if we're not going to let them know.
That's all. So, can I ask you, now, I must be laboring under a misimpression because what I've been told is kids cannot be grandfathered in and that we have to take them in the order that they applied. And the reason we have 58 is because in order to capture all the kids that were here last year, we have some kids who applied before them. Now, that's not correct.
Look at document 2 then. Document 2 says that it gives you the order. And so if you look at down at number 5, document 2 is the open enrollment guidelines. Our guidelines state that this is the order that they'll be placed. WestGB residents will not be displaced. That's the number one thing. So we place our own students first.
Right.
B, students currently attending open enrollment comes second. Third, students of members of that same family. And then fourth, open and first time open enrollment. So you don't have to take the 58 because they get first come, first served, kids returning.
Yeah.
Per our own guidelines.
And Dan, you talked to legal counsel on this and we're okay? Okay. Good.
I don't know where that information came from, but this is accurate.
Good.
Good. Yeah, please. I could probably go for an hour on my comments, but I'm not going to belabor it. This conversation that we're having here is a conversation that I wished we had and I wanted to have when, in the beginning of May, we got the numbers of how many students were going to be displaced. That's the first time we saw this document. It came the first week of May. I looked at it. I saw that there was one senior who was going to be removed. I saw there was so many 8th and 9th graders that were going to be removed. I talked to people subsequently. I found out there was like a 3rd grader who was going to be removed from Westwood to Lindsay. So I had a lot of questions about these, just the numbers I read. And that Marino just said, this is complicated. So I'm sitting there at home going, I've seen these numbers. We've had all this debate. The numbers are possibly different. We need to talk about these numbers, and we need to make a decision. So this is the conversation I thought we would have. The problem that I had, and I was furious, was on a Saturday, I got 20 emails. Okay, 3 weeks later, before a board meeting, rejection letters went out. So, as a board, would we want to have this conversation before the rejection letters went out or after? Now, I feel a little victimized because I have different opinions on what I was going to at least think and propose about open enrollment. And I had no voice because the rejection letters went out before me or anybody in the board could comment on it. Now we're commenting on it, but it's a little late. We haven't had the chance to do it when it would have been a better time to do it. Obviously, like Ben said, sometimes I think we're arguing over things that we maybe don't always need to be arguing, because when I joined the board, we were labeled as being against open enrollment. Okay, I had people calling to Lindsay School the day I was sworn in, and Mr. Thorson was sworn in. Why is Dr. Phelps closing Lindsay School? Okay, well, I'm not doing that. Someone labeled me as that. Okay, conversations were said. Okay, I was for some degree of open enrollment. I talked to someone just the other day, and she said, well, 60% of people want open enrollment. Well, that's not exactly accurate, because 60%, a lot of those people in that wanting open enrollment want a modified open enrollment. So if you put out the statement that 60% want open enrollment, that might be accurate, but maybe only 30% or whatever the number is strongly want open enrollment, and maybe 40% want a modified open enrollment. So, you know, there were a lot of steps along the way that caused me a lot of concern. In the very beginning, the process, we were told that this Burgess and Burgess report would give us some feedback. And I asked the person from Burgess and Burgess, I said, you know, it seems like you're answering the question of open enrollment yes or no, and I'm asking the question of how much, how big do we want open enrollment to be? And I thought maybe we would have gotten more used to the survey to understand what the community wants. Obviously, at the last election, they voted pretty strongly for two new board members who had talked about relooking at open enrollment, but not necessarily removing. I don't think either one of us said we were removing it. We were talking about looking at it, trying to understand, should it keep going up every year because it was going up every year, or should it stay at a cap, or should it be decreased? When we did vote, the day we voted, I spoke up for the to be 10th graders, and we changed that number to make sure that all to be 10th graders would get in. Well, when the numbers came up, my friend, who was a to be 10th grader who lives in Chesterland, got a rejection letter because her mom was honest that they might have to move. She's a resident. She got removed from the school. Is that right? You know, I don't think that's right, but I never had a chance to even do anything about it because, again, the rejection letters went out before any comments were made. I spoke up again for the to be 9th graders because, again, my feeling was if you know, a child has been with us for 3 or 4 years, I think we owe them as a community, you know, some, like they've been here, they've been part of it, they've been made part of the band, they did this, they did that. We found all these stories that came out, all these people, they were ready to become a Wolverine, be part of the school. And, you know, they weren't able to, but a lot of them is because the process took way too long. And it didn't need to take that long. So, you know, that was one of my apologies to the kids, is that this process has been very laborious. We haven't still answered the question of what do we want to do going forward. I think, to me, the priority was what are we going to do with the kids who are impacted today? How can we help them and help them achieve, you know, their goals? And then the next question is, when I talked to Mr. Nutter about it, he said, you know, most time this gets done, it's a phase-in. Well, again, you know, to me it was proposed as either you do this big number or you do this number. We never really compromised about a phase-in. I don't remember ever hearing the word compromise in this whole debate. It was either superintendent's numbers or the board's numbers. You know, I apologize partly for that because, you know, I think if someone just, hey, compromise, oh, great idea, let's compromise. It didn't happen. Okay, so we all suffered from not trying to reach out and get to a level. Were we ever going to get a perfect number? No. We don't know what the community wants. We know what the financial is, but these kids are kids, not numbers. And that's, I think everybody got that in the last 2 months, I hope, that these are real lives, these are students, you know, they come with just a passion. I was so moved by their passion to learn and their passion to be part of this district. That moved me a lot. And I think if we're going to do anything with the numbers, it has to be done gradually, it has to be done thoughtfully, it has to be done, like what Jackie said, more information. We were being pushed, I felt early on, to make a decision early because the deadline was coming when I wish we had had this talk, you know, January, February. That's all I have.
Okay, from that standpoint, can you hear me?
No.
I have a really loud voice. From that standpoint, I think you can understand why there's been some confusion. Anytime that I've had a chance to talk to people, I'll just ask them, how do you feel? Any given room, 7 or 8 people, 3 will be for it, 3 will be against it, or some number. It's a very polarizing issue, as you can see. I think tonight's decision isn't necessarily where we're going with open enrollment, as much as it is we've left some people, some children out in our struggle to try to control the number. And so my approach to this, my personal approach to this was to say, well, I don't think when you make policy you should change it. I was voted in to make decisions, and sometimes those decisions are going to be hard, and they're going to affect children. However, I think based on the information and the time that we did that, we didn't give children and families enough time to react to that decision. So it would be my goal in the coming months that we come out with a decision very decisively what we're doing with open enrollment. Whether it's something we do in this district, whether it's something we discontinue, whether there are caps or whether there are numbers. I feel very strongly about that we'll push to do that. So hopefully by September 1st, we can come to the committee and say, this is our policy. Today, we have something different in front of us. We have children who have started here thinking that maybe I might get in and didn't. We have families that come from different communities with these children. It's a very touching thing. I get, like all board members, many emails talking about cheerleaders, talking about band uniforms, talking about seniors that didn't make it. Those are people, those aren't numbers, and it's difficult to hear their stories and not feel somewhat compelled. So for me, and I'm 1/5 of the vote here, for me, this decision isn't necessarily whether we do open enrollment with a cap number, whether we do open enrollment at all, or what our community wants, because I really still don't think I have an accurate feeling as to what this community wants with open enrollment. What it is for me today is, what do we do with those children who've been left out? I will say this, for me, I'll make that decision, but next year, we will make those decisions very clear, and it can't be another situation where the next 4 months, for those children that didn't get accepted, they didn't have enough time or they don't understand. It has to be that clear policy. It won't be one where I say, well, I can kind of understand that and I think we should incorporate them. My policy will be my policy. Today, I look at it as we have a board that has very little public trust. We made decisions that we thought were the most informed that perhaps maybe weren't. And that those children need to have a voice, and for me, I want to be their voice. That's my own personal opinion with this. I think we've heard from everybody, unless anybody wants to say anything. I did not hear from our superintendent, and I want to see your viewpoint. Your 11 years of experience, you dealt with districts that have open enrollment. What was your feeling?
The districts I've been in, we've had state open enrollment, statewide and contiguous. They've always, except for one, I wanted to dump them, didn't have it. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think you have to look at the community and the surroundings, and I think you just need to make an informed decision. Like you said, tonight is taking care of an issue, I think, that it's created and it's solved. But I think moving forward, there's many things that you can get at your disposal, information in a lot of different ways to make an informed decision for this area, for this community, and what's best. You know, I mean, there's all kinds of different things like what Ben said. There's financial impact. There's a lot of your staffing issues. There's a lot of different things, you know, curricular-wise, they go into open enrollment, and it's based on capacity, and we set capacity. So, you know, with that being said, and moving forward, you know, where is it that we maximize our educational structure and those delivery systems? And then where is it that we know if we start to go upside down financially, we have to make those decisions as well. So I think moving forward, you need more information. There's many ways to get that information. There's a lot of different places you can go. The thing you can do is look at the community and the structure and the delivery. So, you know, I just recommend that you look at this tonight. We can talk about the kids that were displaced. You know, obviously the teachers' kids under the CBA come. And moving forward, when you get that information, you can have that discussion. We can have that discussion here amongst us and the community, for the community.
Yeah, I would suggest that discussion will happen for the community. I hope that the community who is here sees that we don't have an attorney here tonight. You see that we're having this discussion very openly, where we might have had an executive session. There will be times that we have to have discussions in executive session. For instance, we're looking to hire employees. Those have to be done that way. But in an effort to try to show this community that there isn't any backdoor meetings or any kind of things that are inappropriate, we had this discussion in front of you. It can be somewhat painful to hear people not agreeing. That doesn't mean that those opinions aren't valid. It just means that we can agree to disagree. I appreciate that the board members handle this in a civil manner, and I appreciate that we can do that. Shauna, I'm going to motion a resolution to increase as necessary to appropriate each grade capacity limits to to allow students who are last year and/or students of our West Geogga teachers in accordance to our collective bargaining agreement. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes.
Mr. Gutowski?
Yes.
Dr. Phelps?
Yes.
Mrs. DeTore?
No.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Okay, those children that are